All right. Welcome.
Welcome to episode number 5.
Yep, of the We All Know Nothing podcast.
Yeah.
And I guess if this is your first episode, I recommend going back and listening to all the episodes. We've kind of done them in specific order to kind of
lay out the fundamentals.
kind of lay out this story. Food is kind of the least of our worries.
Yeah, and today's podcast will be focused mostly on like what we do and don't eat and why we do that.
And really the circadian aspect to diet.
Yes.
And also how it pertains to light, I hope to kind of get across.
Yeah, which is why we had to do podcasts 2 through 4, laying up AM sunlight and deuterium and things like that.
Yeah, so go back and listen to all those. Deuterium, we kind of covered a lot of food on that, so I don't know if we're going to go to too much detail
on the science of it.
On deuterium, on this, we might just talk about what foods are high in deuterium and what not, and the seasonal approach to eating these foods,
And how your body is able to process it then.
But some things I wanted to
clarify, or new information came out, so we wanted to just make sure our listeners are up to speed with the latest that we know.
Yeah, so I had recommended going to DD centers.
For deuterium depleted water.
Yeah, and I found out new information. It's like I had said and was kind of careful.
Trepidatious, yeah.
Giving advice on that, but I found out they require you to get 2 tests that are $700 each.
Oh God.
They charge you $250 for a mask, a breathing mask that supposedly you breathe out deuterium depleted water, and then the idea is you recycle it when you breathe it in. But the mask costs like $45, so then they charge $250, and it seems pretty unethical, especially since the tests that they make you take before you can buy their water.
They're not that efficacious.
The community that I'm in is very skeptical of if they work or not.
Like the validity of it.
And like I said, I think the MRI is the best route, but it's very difficult to really test deuterium levels in the body. Last podcast was just kind of laying out ideas and
how to get started, the research you should start doing on your own.
And I'm not really focused on my deuterium levels, just the ideas of living. It's almost like a framework of I do this because I know
the downstream implications
of what it does with deuterium. And I mean, deuterium is just a fascinating new frontier, really.
Yeah.
It's gonna develop a lot over the next few years, and there are people working on ways to make water cheaper, deuterium depleted water cheaper, and that'll be huge if you can buy deuterium depleted water for like 1/10 the price.
Yeah.
And just keep an eye for that. I mean, even if that happens, the public's not going to rush to using it, but if you know that it's a big deal, then you can take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So hopefully things develop on that front. If you wanted to do deuterium depleted water, I'd recommend Preventa. They have a distributor in California. They are from Budapest.
Europe, right,
yeah, that's kind of where deuterium depleted water came from at first.
The research, yeah.
And that's like the only other place that depletes deuterium besides DD centers. And just to reiterate, if you do decide to use deuterium depleted water, lower is not better. Always. Preventa does sell 25 parts per million, but you have to be really, really careful going that low. I would never go that low. I would stick around 100 to 120 parts per million, and maybe if I was sick, I'd go to 85. And Preventa, so let's do the math here. Preventa 65 parts per million water is $16.47 per bottle, which comes out to $197 per case. It sounds expensive, but compared to other modalities, even juicing is more expensive than this. What I would do with the 65 parts per million is split it 50-50 with regular good water and then this stuff. So you would do around, let's say the water you're drinking is 140 parts per million. you would add 65 to 140, which comes to 205, and then you divide that by 2 because you're splitting it 50-50. So it puts you around 100 to 105. And that's what that's what I would be doing if I was drinking deuterium depleted water. The 65 parts per million, 85 parts per million, and split it 50-50 with the water you're drinking.
Gotcha.
So that's who I would go to if I was to.
But we do want to reiterate that like the story is not about the water you're drinking, it's about the water you're producing. So unless you're really sick, it's most likely not worth the investment to get deuterium depleted water. You do want to focus on this podcast though of how you deplete deuterium from your diet, and then as well as fixing your circadian.
Well, we had iterated. It's not even just diet and drinking water. It's really the circadian aspects, avoiding EMF.
Yeah, getting sunlight.
It really comes down to everything we're talking about for mitochondrial function.
Right.
And this melanopsin, I think.
Which we'll get into.
You're going to hear that a lot of melanopsin in our podcast because it is something that's really fascinating to me and I think is a root cause of a lot of things.
Yeah. One message I do think that Jack gives off that I want to reiterate here is if you are really sick and you're still living in the environment in which you got sick in, you're not going to get better. You need to get into a different environment because whatever caused you to be sick is still going to be there even if you drink deuterium depleted water, even if you change your diet, those environmental stressors are still going to be there. So you do have to change your environment if you're extremely sick.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Deuterium isn't always bad. It's bad when it's in the wrong places at the wrong time in the wrong ratios. And these are controlled by circadian mechanisms and sunlight. And the reason why we say you need to move away from a bad environment is because there comes a point where no amount of deuterium depleted water is going to help you. And in the last podcast, I said that deuterium, I kind of phrased it as a cure for everything, when really I was more laying out the complexity of our biology and how it works at the smallest scales to iterate that there's probably no cure coming ever because if it did, it'd act on deuterium and deuterium depletion. But these systems are so complex, they're controlled by light and nature and the infinite complexity, and I just don't see ever being able to recreate that with any sort of technology or pill. So really the message I want to get to you is you need to reconnect with nature, you need to get sunlight, you need to ground, you need to protect your eyes, you need to perfect your circadian rhythm, you need to move away from bad environments and away from other people that are using and abusing the wireless technology. And if you do get sick, you have some ideas and you're not clueless to why this is happening. And what you can do is take a trip to Mexico, get strong solar light, and you can use deuterium depleted water as a tool. But the ways to deuterium deplete naturally and control these tightly coupled systems that control the deuterium in your body is what you should be focusing on, and not the deuterium depleted water itself.
The other thing we wanted to set the record straight on is we used an incorrect name.
Okay, yeah, Michaela, right?
Yeah, we said Michelle Peterson instead of Michaela Peterson.
Yeah,
so we meant Michaela.
Most people weren't going to catch that, but she's Jordan Peterson's daughter.
Right, so she does have quite a bit of a following.
There might be a few people that caught that, but not a big deal. And then there's one, I had made some we had talked about not over drinking water, and said Dr. Laszlo Boros doesn't drink any water. I'd be very careful to not drink enough water. I think that's kind of reckless
crazy.
Advice. Drink when you're thirsty. Just my main point of that was just don't force a gallon of water because you think you're going to lose weight that way. Just drink really good water and drink when you're thirsty.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into this.
Let's get into our food and diet podcast.
So
the first thing you wanted to start with is leptin and melanopsin.
yeah, so really the focus of diet should be in like, it's becoming more of a like word. There was a Joe Rogan episode that was primarily on leptin, and two guys pretty much argued back and forth what caused leptin resistance. It's kind of becoming like the new, like what's causing obesity.
Sure.
Is this leptin, which is a hormone for fat metabolism, and the leptin receptor is in the hypothalamus in the brain, and that's also where your SCN is. It's in the hypothalamus. And
which again is your super cosmetic nucleus, which sets every biological clock in your entire body.
Most of the diet people don't realize, or the food guys don't realize, that leptin is tied to melanopsin, the blue light photoreceptor.
Which is in our eyes and on our skin.
Which makes a lot of sense that there's circadian aspects to diet and how we use fuel, our metabolism, because what you eat, how much energy you need, and everything's going to change
based on the solar spectrum.
As the seasons change, if you
the quantum yield changes.
Went from living on the equator to the very northern latitude, you're going to get all this information from the environment, and your body's going to adapt and make heat differently. You know, you have to make more heat to survive.
In northern latitudes.
You're not getting the carbs that you would at
lower latitudes.
Like a big thing people are missing is the circadian aspect of diet, and that's why I really got my attention from Jack Kruse, because he was the first one and the only one I know that's talking about the circadian aspects of diet, which make complete sense to me, where it's like you wouldn't be eating the same thing year round. Things change with the spectrum of the sun and the seasons and what's growing in your environment. So it takes paleo to like the next level that you need to go to really get to like how we evolved and what's natural. So a lot of it's just common sense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and keep it simplified, because the leptin and stuff is really complex, and maybe an entire episode will be dedicated to that in the future. And I don't feel qualified enough at this point to really speak about it. But I recommend checking out Jack Kruse's work, his Leptin RX, his Epi Paleo RX book. You could just type his name in a Google search box and type in leptin, and
something will come back.
Learn about leptin resistance and all of that.
Yeah.
But it just makes complete sense to me that fat metabolism, which is controlled by leptin, is tied to the blue light photoreceptor, which this gets into a lot of the things we do to control circadian rhythm with our light and stuff.
And the blue light blockers and all of that.
What you eat, calories matter, I think, when you're leptin resistant. When you're leptin sensitive, you can eat whatever you want. And, like what we've noticed is like food, we can eat whatever we want whenever we want.
Yeah, and I don't really gain weight.
When it's in the right, like when we're in the summer, we eat way more carbs.
Yeah.
We can get away with
sweets.
A lot more. In the winter, we kind of button up. This year, I think I'm going to do a lot more carnivore and keto.
Yeah.
Just to kind of make up for being in a higher EMF environment.
Yeah.
So leptin's tied to this melanopsin blue light photoreceptor. And what causes melanopsin or leptin resistance is pretty much circadian disruptions. And it can be from food, and it can be from staying up late at night, getting blue light in your eyes, from EMF if you're in a bad environment. Because anything that breaks this weak covalent bond between melanopsin and vitamin A causes free retinol, and this free retinol destroys, it wreaks havoc on all your photoreceptors, and pretty much causes chaos in your clocks, your mechanisms, because we have these trillions of clocks. The SCN is the main clock, and that receives information from, it's directly connected to your eyes. And then your skin, your gut, everything, all these things are also tied to the SCN and all these peripheral clock genes. So it's just really
easily destroyed and
it's
easily
really
messed up.
Unfortunately, especially in humans, because we have the weakest covalent bond
Of any mammal,
compared to, like, we do all these lab tests on rats, but they have
strong covalent bonds because they're nocturnal.
yeah. So if something's giving rat cancer,
It definitely will give us cancer.
there's more concern in humans, unfortunately, because we're so sensitive to light.
Yeah.
But also your food can also confuse those mechanisms because there's circadian aspects to the food you eat.
Yeah.
Because if you're eating all food is light, and light is a photon is energy that gets stored in the electron spin, and when we eat that food, we're
taking in those electrons.
Stripping the electron.
Yeah.
So our mitochondria are deciphering the information from the food we eat in this strange way.
Mm-hmm. So again, if you're eating food that's from a different latitude, and you're leptin resistant, like not only are you storing more fat, but you're also confusing your body on another circadian level. So that's going to be a recipe for disaster.
And I guess I just want to iterate, like, I don't understand the complexities of this.
We're going to do a whole podcast on leptin, right?
Well, maybe down the road.
More research and...
Yeah, I mean, as I connect more dots.
Right.
I'm just pointing out, like, kind of my focus and to give some people like kind of a broad overview. I'm not pretending to know the absolute details of this.
Yeah.
I'm just
I was more
out
so curious for myself I am not well versed on leptin, so I just wanted to understand at the macro level, like, how is this causing problems in our body? And I think you answered that question for me. Like, it messes up the way that your body stores fat, which is immensely huge in obesity, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not leptin resistant, you're most likely not overstoring fat.
So I guess we could talk about, a lot of this comes, it's Jack Crew's recommendations, because he's really one of the only ones talking about this. So he's the one I'm going to follow for advice.
Mostly on this
because
topic.
He really is an expert on this. And so I follow his, I've changed my own diet because of his recommendations. I think the most important thing I want to emphasize on this podcast is the timing of eating, because that's kind of like my new obsession of, like, when to eat and when not to eat, and really only eating when the sun is up.
Pepper joined us.
Hey
baby.
Wonder if they can see that camera.
I know, I wonder if they can just see your ears or something pop up.
So one thing we do is we eat 30 minutes within sun rising. We go on a walk, get early AM sun, then we have a big breakfast. I've switched to trying to have my biggest meal in the morning. It's really high in protein and really high in fat.
We typically have eggs and sausage and bacon.
And we'll talk about the things we eat later on. And then also being done eating.
Before
so only
sunset.
Eating when the sun is up, I think, is extremely important. And so winter, when the sun low,
your window is really small.
Yeah, so you're eating a lot earlier. But even in the summer, I'm trying to eat before 5, 6. We ate a little bit late tonight at 6, but the sun sets at 9.
Right.
In the winter, I like to eat at like 4 p.m. Sometimes I just eat a really big lunch and then eat a tiny dinner to make up, so I'm not digesting food at night. And really I think you're supposed to be eating when the sun is up, and then there's all these mechanisms that are circadian driven at night that only work when, like, you don't have
food to digest.
Food to digest. And I find I sleep a lot better. I have far less inflammation. I wake up more rejuvenated. Like, I can wake up
Which
with
makes
less
sense
effort.
because your body is supposed to be restoring when it's sleeping. It's not supposed to be digesting food.
Yeah.
So I think that makes total sense.
So, like, if I eat a meal late at night,
or if we have like
or a really
popcorn.
big meal, I'm really congested and I have troubles waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
So I think like if you have troubles waking up or you have
When did we eat late the other
congestion
night?
issues,
I had like
allergies.
stiff hands.
Like I get allergies if I eat late at night. Like
I get like joint
stay
pain.
up drinking
Or not
and
joint pain, like
eat something at like
puffy
11.
hands.
I almost feel worse because I ate. Where some people think like, oh, you need to eat because you drank and you'll feel better. Where it's like, man, I think the eating late really disrupts your sleep. Like really disrupts your deep sleep and the benefits. Like you're sleeping, but you're not getting the restorative sleep that you get when you really eat early.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people miss this because a lot of people are snacking up until bed.
For sure.
I used to blame the food that I would eat the night before, but I think it's really like I have like allergic reaction where I'd like runny nose, kind of just feel off and inflamed.
Yeah, like
and I would blame
fingers.
like, oh, it was that thing I ate.
Yeah.
But really, it was the timing I ate it that I thought that screwed me up.
Totally.
And I didn't realize that till I really started to focus on the circadian aspects of eating. And eating early is huge for just clear sinuses, my allergies, inflammation. And then, so like if even with drinking and stuff, it's like, I try to be done drinking in the evening pretty early. I mean, that's hard for a lot of people.
It's very hard.
And then
most
there's
people
even
don't day drink.
some cultures, I mean, they're up
They
late.
don't even go out to eat until like 8:30.
Like New York's really late schedule.
Europe.
And then you go to Europe, it's even later.
I know.
So I mean that's kind of a problem, but
yeah. But it's not only like what you eat, how you eat throughout the day, but it's also like the location that you're eating in, right? So the other circadian aspect of it is your latitude. So if you're living and getting sunlight from Minnesota, you should be eating food that can be grown in Minnesota. You should not be eating food that's grown in California, that could be grown in Guatemala. Like, that's a circadian mismatch. So,
and you're not going to find carbs in the winter. So if
yeah.
you like eating carbs, you got to move south.
Yep.
To where you're getting UV all year round.
Yeah. But though that's the circadian side of diet, and so that's kind of the framework of why we eat what we eat. So once we get into it, you can understand why it basically seems like arbitrary diet guidelines if you don't understand why we're doing it.
Something on top of that, I think you should eat outside. I wrote that down.
Yeah.
We try and eat most of our meals outside. This summer we've eaten most of them. In the winter we have the greenhouse and we're out there eating breakfast in the greenhouse.
Yeah.
I think there's something to eating. There's this information of the light in your environment, the food you're eating. That's some recommendations that Jack Cruz has given, and I follow it. And I think it's great advice.
What
if
I've
nothing
noticed,
else, it's kind of nice to be outside and have that be a ritual.
But what I've noticed is when I'm out in the sun eating, I'm actually very, how do I say this? When I'm eating outside, I can never finish my meal. I'm full so quickly.
Yeah.
But then if I eat inside at work, it's like I'm a bottomless pit and all I want to do is snack and snack and snack and have more food. And if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense because blue light is meant to stress you out, which means you're more impulsive. You tend to have like a higher appetite. So
like watching TV at night may cause you to snack and eat more. And it's also raising your blood glucose, your insulin, making you insulin resistant. It's and being in a high EMF environment does the exact same thing.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, I know our first podcast, we kicked off Phil's top 10 things for mitochondrial health, and it seems like every podcast we're going back to that list of things, but what we've really learned is all of them are so interconnected that we would be remiss if we talked about diet and didn't talk about all of those other things because they're so interconnected.
Yeah, true. Nice.
Another aspect, so it kind of goes along with circadian rhythm, but the importance of DHA, especially if you're in the northern latitudes.
So it is tied to circadian rhythm because, in nature you find higher amounts of DHA at northern latitudes.
Right.
So
which actually helps them biologically as you get into the colder months and things like that, and lose the UV.
Yeah, so like that's one argument. The paleo, low carb, keto, carnivore people say is like, oh, these Eskimos lived off fat,
Whale fat, yeah.
They had no carbs, and it's like, well, they're living.
Well, they adapted up there first and foremost.
Yeah, and they're getting a lot of DHA.
A lot.
And really,
of DHA.
you need more DHA to turn that weak sunlight into information that your body uses.
That your mitochondria.
So that's where you can use DHA as like a tool when in the summer. Eat more DHA to get more benefits from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But in the winter, it's crucial because
it's the only way to convert that sunlight into useful energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it is one of the only things that can help protect you against the damage of blue light.
Yeah, it's doing a lot of things. So
We
DHA
cannot
is
stress the importance of DHA.
DHA is complex, but yeah, I can't stress enough getting seafood. You can't get it in a pill.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. We'll talk about the things.
Yeah,
we
we'll talk
eat
about the
for
different
DHA.
types.
But there is a circadian aspect and why you should eat DHA, especially in Minnesota or
northern.
pretty much anywhere in the U.S. You're gonna need more, especially with the changing environment.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk different diets, and if you didn't already realize, like this podcast is pretty much laying out things we're doing to prep for 5G, the changing environment, like these. We're
and to
doing,
have a family,
some
like
people
there's
think,
a lot of things.
Yeah, like it's a little radical, and it's like, why are they doing this? But it's like, well, we see this problem, and we're trying to come up with
Easy solutions.
Yeah. And these are the reason we're doing this diet. Your diet that worked 10, 20 years ago isn't going to work
because we don't
today.
live in the same enviirement.
Things have
of
changed
10 to 20 years ago.
So that's why I think the keto and carnivore diet is not a trend. It's not going to go
Those
away.
are going to stay.
It's only going to keep getting greater and greater.
You know what's funny? Today at work, there was discussion around why is the bread category just like not doing well? And people were like, oh, it's the gluten-free trend, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, it's because people are realizing they need to cut carbs out of their life to be healthy.
And they don't feel, people are starting to not feel well. But that's the carnivore, like I never thought, I didn't think it was possible to only eat meat.
I thought you would die. I literally thought you would die.
And I'm not saying that's healthy. I'm saying like it's pointing out some very interesting things.
Yeah.
And it's like these people that are very, very sick with very bad autoimmune depression, like very, very sick people are switching
both
to
Jordan
carnivore.
Peterson and Michaela Peterson were very sick before.
And I mean, I follow these groups. I have a ton of respect. I love the carnivore group because
they're so open-minded.
Extremely open-minded people that think like me, and they're
willing to test new things. They're willing to hear new arguments.
And
they're just trying to feel better.
They're really getting bashed, and it's being labeled as almost like part of the right wing.
What?
Like there's weird things that. Well, I mean, because
like the hunting aspect or something.
There's this push for veganism, plant-based, to save the environment, and then on the other side, it's like, no, that's all propaganda. That meat's not causing any global warming or like emissions, and it's like there's pretty good evidence that like sustainable grass-fed beef, like you need hoofed animals. It's the natural thing
it's
to eat.
It's an ecosystem, yeah.
Where you're ripping down ecosystems
to
and
plant
it's
fields
really unnatural
to make plant-based shit.
So I'm sorry if you're vegan or vegetarian, but I lean definitely towards the
carnivore keto.
Mm-hmm.
But we definitely identify with the vegan and the vegetarian because, I mean, we try and eat as local as possible. We hate factory farm. We are all about like best agricultural practices. I don't even trust the USDA organic because I know how expensive that certification is. Like we had in-depth conversations with our farmers like about a lot of this. And so we're very fortunate that we live in Minnesota and there's a lot of agriculture readily available to us in the community. But we just, so we identify with vegans and vegetarians of what they're trying to do for the environment.
I think we
and
actually
the
have a
community.
lot of vegetarians and vegans that follow us because
It's
we're
a
kind of in
very
between both groups,
yeah.
and I actually find there's similarities between the two groups. A lot of the
Yeah.
carnivores were vegans, and they're using carnivore to recover from the damage they did when they were vegan and vegetarian.
Yeah.
But the vegan and vegetarian group, they understand our stuff because the reconnecting with nature and sunlight, all these things that make a lot of sense. And also just being, when you're a thinking human being, you don't want animals tortured or
Right.
so I understand that too.
Totally.
So
I mean, I see a cow and I'm like, that's a big pepper.
I don't like to talk diet too much because I don't want to be labeled with any group around diet because it's so heated and it's almost like religion.
And I would say people are so individual. There is someone out there that can live healthily the rest of their life being vegan. 100% there's someone out there.
Yeah, someone who will get crushed by eating meat who's allergic to it. So I have no idea what's right for you.
We really want to urge, like, everyone is individual. You have to test and do what makes sense and what makes you feel the best. And obviously, if you're getting blood work and things, use the data of how your health is changing to help inform what's working and not working for you.
And how much of diets change. Like, it's hard to take sides on something when I've changed my opinion so much.
Well, I think that's a good segue. Let's go talk about, so we've talked about this a little bit. We were on a standard American diet, I would say, through college.
I've always been aware of food because my mom was a dietitian, and I had a lot of food allergies growing up. Milk, dairy, nuts.
Spinach.
A lot of vegetables. And a lot of molds. Anything with high in molds. But, we grew up with the
food pyramid.
Fat is bad.
Yeah.
Carbs are good. I did a lot of
Whole
athletics,
wheat.
so it's like, oh, you need more carbs, carbo load, that kind of idea. But it shifted, and then it was like,
well, then
college,
you got an injury, and you couldn't recover from that injury.
Once you get into football, it's all about getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's when I was like eating as much food as possible, tons of protein shakes. Yeah, not really caring about diet, just eat as many carbs as possible, or as many calories as possible to put on weight. Because I'm a skinny guy.
And you guys were working out a lot. Yeah. But then we graduated, and I was a mess.
I had a leg injury.
And you had a leg injury.
If you look at photos of me, I was super inflamed. It could have been also
like neither of us had a jawline.
Circadian disruption. I took an antibiotic that messed me up. Afloxacin. That's a really high in fluoride that causes neurological issues and all sorts of things like in some people. So it could have, and antibiotics are not good. They can cause a lot of gut issues and stuff. But that really got me really focused on diet. And I watched Fathead, the documentary. That's like the year it came out, was my senior year. And he just ate McDonald's. And I was like blown away. Like, what? He just ate McDonald's and just avoided the Coke and lost weight? So I'm like, wow, what is the real thing here? So it's like, but then you
stumbled upon the Bulletproof podcast.
Then I was like, that's when I was like, oh, this makes sense. Fat is actually good and we need it for our brain.
Yeah.
And so then I started.
And
to
Dave did a really good job
butter.
of like presenting the science and getting really good guests.
So then I got obsessed with Bulletproof and all of that. And
so we were essentially on like the Bulletproof diet for like 2.5 years, where we like didn't eat the nightshades. We did the Bulletproof coffee in the morning, which had the intermittent fasting aspect of it. But then we got way too skinny, like way too skinny.
Well, I was like 215 in college. Too heavy for my build. Now,
you should have never been that heavy.
Now I'm like 165.
Yeah, but you were like 157.
At first, people are like, "Man, you're like anorexic," because it's like they remember me being so big. But it's like this is actually healthier. Like,
well, you just went back down to
everything
normal
just
size.
Yeah.
You lost all the inflammation.
I still have the strength though. Even though I could bench like 315 then. I just don't bench anymore.
Well, you
so
don't
I don't
practice
even know.
those muscles, so that's like not a fair comparison.
Yeah.
If you got back into lifting shape, I'm sure you could do more.
Well, I mean,
because of what you know about what I've taught you.
Then I could do I couldn't do 10 pull-ups. Now I can do 30. So I don't know what really to.
Well, pull-ups are a hard measure because like if your body weight goes down, you should be able to do more.
Yeah, true.
You have less mass you're pulling.
It's very true.
Yeah.
So just athletically built differently now.
Yeah.
But
So after Bulletproof, we
really
decided to go like
lowered inflammation stuff. Got
Yeah.
crazy about the
Keto.
keto, but
Then we
that,
went, like,
that
full
looked
keto.
more high fat, lots of vegetables,
moderate protein.
and then I thought protein was bad.
Right.
I kind of was sold like, oh, that causes inflammation, and
It can be carcinogenic.
kind of looking at the anti-aging product, like everyone's been talking how, oh, if you eat high protein, mTOR gets upregulated, and it's more complex than they want to make, like, than it really,
Yeah.
it's more complex than that.
And so I would say when I did keto, I got way too thin.
We were almost like vegetarian with just a lot of butter and fat and
Yes.
eggs
Yeah.
with a side of meat.
I would say we essentially were vegetarian.
I
Because
cooked
we
a
hardly
lot
had
of
like
veggies,
steak and
yeah.
things. It was just a lot of eggs, veggies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And grass-fed beef.
Sometimes chicken, but rarely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of veggies. But then, around then, a little earlier than when we started going on keto is when you started discovering light. And that's when we started wearing our blue blockers, because not only was Dave talking about it, but you started stumbling upon Dr. Cruz.
Well, I probably was wearing blue blockers 2 years before stumbling upon Cruz.
Right.
And that's why Dr. Jack Cruz's stuff started to make sense, because it was like,
You had already heard about the
there's
light
something
thing.
to this light, because then...
But we really didn't change off of the keto diet until like this last year and a half.
Yeah, we haven't really been strict keto in a long time.
I guess more low carb, yeah. Just low carb.
On and off, and now I just see there's more reason to.
So now how we...
Because it's just the changing environment. And I think people are finding health or getting health. I think the issue is the EMF and stuff because of this deuterium. So these are... The keto diet works and the carnivore diet works because I think they're deuterium depleting diets, and it makes up for circadian disruption.
Yep.
So I just view it as the environment changes.
It just means we have to be more strict in how we were meant.
And
to eat
you can
food.
use diet as a tool. It's not the end all be all.
If you're controlling for light, you have a lot more bandwidth to cheat a little bit on the diet.
Definitely, if you're getting a lot more sunlight, like if you move to Mexico or like you were outside all day.
You can probably do no diet restrictions.
In the summer, you
Yeah.
can be a lot more lenient on your diet.
Yeah.
And just it all comes down to this leptin resistance
Yeah.
stuff.
So the journey we've been on in diet was basically we did Bulletproof, then we did keto, and now how we would frame up our diet is it's a local seasonal diet.
Obsessed with protecting Melanopsin because Melanopsin is really the main driver of what you do with that food in a weird way. And Melanopsin is that blue light photoreceptor that gets destroyed from EMF and blue light. So when you control that and you live in a better environment, and that's the first steps before really going and controlling food.
Yeah.
Let's
talk about what we avoid because of deuterium and the damage to Melanopsin.
And again, go back to that other podcast to listen more on deuterium.
But we avoid wheat. It's very high in deuterium.
Yep.
We avoid corn. We avoid
soy.
We avoid
all the GMOs.
Nuts. We avoid beans.
I really try to avoid any produce that's mass produced too.
Yep.
Like I try to buy as local as possible, but sometimes it's like you can't always do that.
No.
But if you're gonna gorge and have your whole diet based around veggies, I think you better be getting them local. And really, I think the obvious things are avoiding processed foods.
Yeah. Hydrogenated oils, vegetable oils.
And when we go into diet and talking about food, I wouldn't say I'm like an expert on all of this.
No.
Like there's a lot of, I just want to give you guys things to think about where there's a lot of these diet experts that you could
There's so much information on diet out there that you can go down so many rabbit holes.
I have troubles with this podcast because I feel like I know nothing, even though it's been my focus. Like my
hey,
whole
that's
life
why
and
your
obsession.
podcast is called We All Know Nothing.
Yeah.
There's just so much information out there.
But yeah,
We avoid
high fructose corn
high-
syrup is a processed sugar. If you're gonna do sugar, do honey or maple syrup. And I use it for cooking in small amounts. If something tastes bad, you add salt, sugar, and a little sweet,
Fat.
and it tastes good.
Salt, fat, and sugar are the three things that make food taste better.
One of the biggest things I avoid is vegetable oils. And hydrogenated fats is the absolute number one thing you need to avoid. They're
So that's
high in
like your
deuterium.
canola oil, your sunflower oil, your safflower oil.
And I think you need to make restrictions on food because there's a lot of crap out there. And if you have a basic ingredient list of things you avoid, it knocks off a lot of crap like canola oil, soybean oil, any of the vegetable oils. Avoid anything made with those. And a lot of the vegetarian foods
It's
tend,
all only made with that.
for the most part, sometimes they'll be smart and use coconut
Yeah,
oil.
fair.
But it's more expensive.
Yes.
So a lot of foods don't use coconut oil.
Yes.
So you can get like an idea of the quality of these foods based off the ingredients they use.
Do you want to explain why that's a problem? So basically, these oils, not only they have a very low burning temperature.
Well, they're really processed to
and so
even
they're-
create
exactly.
those oils.
So when they enter your body, like they're just wreaking havoc and increasing. What are they called? Not free agents.
Free radicals, but
Free
I mean
radicals,
they're high in
yeah.
deuterium. All the vegetable
Yeah.
oils are high in deuterium, even though they're. If you Dave Asprey will say they're rancid fats, where a saturated fat, is stable fat.
Sure, that makes sense.
But really, I think the importance is the deuterium content and the
in
different
combination.
fats. So I stick to butter, coconut oil, olive oil. If you're going to do olive oil,
Don't heat it.
don't heat it, but also avoid California because you're going to get glyphosate.
Italian, yeah.
I buy Italian anywhere from
Europe.
Europe.
They have way stricter rules.
Yeah, if I'm getting
agriculture.
food, a lot of I actually favor things coming from Europe because it's gonna be higher quality.
And similar latitude.
There's good reason that when you go over there, you don't get sick from the food that
Right.
you eat. And
I
then-
love it there.
Yeah, people just feel better from the food over there. Even the gluten.
Yeah, I know
everything.
people with celiac that can go to France and have no problems eating gluten.
But avoid everything with glyphosate. So glyphosate is the weed killer Roundup, and it's really sprayed on everything. It's a problem.
And if it's not sprayed on that crop, unfortunately, that crop most likely gets mixed with a crop that gets sprayed. So
A lot of intelligent people, let's say Bill Nye, the science guy, or these real
sciencey people.
self-proclaimed science people like to take the side of pro-GMO, but they don't understand the complexity of the subject. They don't understand the complexity of glyphosate. The debate saying glyphosate is the safest herbicide or pesticide you can use compared to everything else, so it's actually a good thing. That's what they'll tell you.
That's like saying cigarettes are still better
But
than guns.
it's because they don't understand the mechanisms and how it's working in the body. Because it is a lot different than just like a poisonous chemical that kills. So it was invented as a chelator, which means it binds to minerals and metals, and they used it to clean bats and industrial material. And because it's a chelator, and what it is the nitrogen binds to the minerals or these metals, and in the body, glyphosate replaces glycine. Glycine's the number one amino acid in the body, and it's the number one amino acid that makes up collagen, and collagen is
the protein.
it's the number one protein, but it's an interesting protein in that it works as a semiconductor, and it's the main light antenna that we were talking about in the last podcast, where exclusion zone water it's hydrated with, and how it acts as a light antenna, and it oscillates, and all of these light signals for the body come from what light's doing with collagen. And this collagen is a semiconductor, and when it's replaced with glyphosate, it loses its piezoelectric ability, which means it can't build an electrical charge or store the same electrical charge. And really, this is how you're turning with water, collagen, and DHA. You're creating a DC electrical current that your body uses. But when glycine screws this all up,
Glyphosate screws that all up,
yeah,
not glycine.
The glyphosate, the nitrogen binds to the copper ion and changes the physics of the protein. And glycine has some really crazy physics compared to glyphosate. It has different interactions with water.
And nature selected for glycine.
It changes the physics of this protein and what it's doing, and it causes, kind of chaos. It disconnects you from the sun.
Yeah.
It lowers the exclusion zone. It's going to cause mitochondrial dysfunction in a very weird route. And it also binds to minerals in the soil, so
strips the soil of its.
It destroys bacteria.
It takes the top layer. What's it called? The topsoil. It ruins the topsoil, which is essentially what helps plants grow.
And it's an antimicrobial, and it's killing bacteria
in your gut.
In your gut and in the soil.
Yep.
And you can't really get rid of it once it's sprayed on the soil. So this is a huge issue.
Well, and it can actually lead to blight, right? So if you remember the movie Interstellar, they were in the position that they were in because of blight, but blight happens because there's no longer bacteria on the topsoil. So we're essentially causing Interstellar to happen.
The crazy complexity, and it's like everything, it can kill bees too, I guess. That could be an effect, but I think EMF's really causing the damage to the bees. But glyphosate scares me, and it's one reason that I'm leaning towards more of eating animal products, because glyphosate's in everything. So they spray glyphosate on all wheat, or not every farmer's going to do that, but it allows them to harvest the wheat faster. So they do it. It causes it to dry up so they can harvest it. And all the wheat in the U.S. gets put together and processed together. So if you're eating wheat, there's no way to avoid glyphosate.
Yeah.
I think even if you're eating organic in this country, you're going to get glyphosate on everything, even the produce. Most of it's coming from California, which is a huge issue. It's in honey, where it's you could be in the remote area and your honey's still getting glyphosate in it. But that's another issue with wheat and gluten, and one reason I would avoid it. Even we eat gluten-free, and we've eaten gluten-free since graduating college.
Yeah, since 2012.
But I wouldn't say I have a sensitivity to it. It's more of just it's one of those guidelines I've created where it's a higher quality food if it's gluten-free.
Well, they're taking more time. It's not a huge industry.
Or even when I'm looking up a restaurant, I love to see that they're making an effort to make gluten-free. If they're not, it's what else are you?
Yeah, when I go to a restaurant and I see something that should be gluten-free and it's not, I'm like, why? Why is that not? Why are you throwing flour in there? What?
So it's that's
to make it cheaper, most likely. So
that's just another guideline.
That's just our tangent on glyphosate.
You can eat gluten-free. If you don't eat gluten-free, it's so easy. And if you have to have your bread or whatnot, I would avoid. We do once in a while for
gluten-free
burger.
Bread. Yeah.
We don't stress too much. If I do a pizza, I'm usually making a cauliflower crust pizza.
Yeah. Or rice
I can't even tell the difference.
One thing that is potentially high in deuterium that unfortunately I do eat is rice.
Yeah, but eat in the summer.
Right. Let's talk about some things we do eat.
Let me think if there's anything else on our list
that we want to make sure to say don't eat.
I don't eat peanuts.
Yeah.
Because they're high in molds, specifically mycotoxins. I think that's what I'm allergic to. Sometimes I can eat a peanut and I'm fine, and other times I'm not.
Yeah. That's the same thing with cheese, though, too. Sometimes you, literally have your throat closes.
Mm-hmm. I eat dairy now. So I used to be allergic to milk growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Lactose
break out in
intolerant.
hives, and then I was lactose intolerant. And I still, I mean, as a kid, you're like, oh, I love ice cream. I love this. I love cheese. I love
Yeah.
pizza. But man, my gut would get ripped up from that. And then when I got into the bulletproof diet, I was like, oh, cheese are high in these molds, where I think you are sensitive to those molds when you're not getting enough sunlight, your circadian disrupted. I have absolutely no issues with cheese now.
Yeah.
And milk. Like this is the first year I was drinking milk, where I wouldn't say that's a healthy food, but it was like, it's a local milk. And I think, the casein protein might be inflammatory. Some people don't do well. But I was just surprised I could have as much milk, as much cream. I've been...
Yeah, and you weren't stuck.
This
you
entire
didn't have,
year,
you weren't gassy.
I've gone pretty crazy on the cheese.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe a little overboard on cheese.
Potentially, but it's so it makes everything so much better.
But that's because I've kind of switched to this carnivore, and I don't want to eat just meat. But I'm kind of switching to eating a lot more animal products and a lot less veggies. So it's I fill that in. I'm doing a lot more cheese. So if I'm okay with it, I have no issues.
Yeah.
And maybe if you have issues with cheese, if you really work
for
on
light, maybe then you can enjoy
your
your
environment,
cheese.
get a lot more sunlight.
Yeah.
I think your allergies go away with really, because sunlight is controlling your immune system.
I like how our diet episode is turning into a light episode.
Well, it is all about light.
I know.
And if I eat late at night, then I wake up and I'm like, oh, that food did not agree with me because now I have
I know, and then you blame it on the
stomach,
food. Totally.
and I have
That's
congestion.
the same thing that we were talking about with hangovers, though. How you blame it on you blame your hangover on the alcohol when really it was because you were up so late.
Yeah, where I think I'm allergic to all food if I eat it too late.
Yeah. Well, my body's just rejecting the fact that I did something under fake lights when there was no sun.
What else do we avoid?
Pop, obviously.
Yeah, and fruity drinks.
We don't buy anything from the center grocery aisles.
Things that are high in deuterium will be fruits, sugary anything.
Processed, boxed.
I go into a regular grocery store and there's nothing edible. Don't eat, if you're gonna buy bread, buy a bread with 5 ingredients. That's what it should be, as opposed to
26.
50. There's so many ingredients.
The bread should maybe be in the freezer.
You should know every single ingredient and be able to make it off of the ingredient list.
Yeah.
This is what I can buy to make this.
Yeah.
Not a whole list of different things that they use to make it.
The other thing I find interesting when you start looking at ingredient lists is they have to list the ingredients in order of the amount of volume that's in the product. So the first ingredient is the most ingredient that you'll be consuming in that good. So if you're eating I don't know, let's say bread, the first ingredient should be the flour or whatever, but in some cases it's not. So just take a peruse at the ingredient list. If it's really long, just put that back on the shelf.
Well, this is another reason to not eat out and make your own food,
Yeah.
which, I love cooking. And if I'm going to eat something, that's not considered healthy, if I make it myself, I can control all of these things that go into it. And it's a lot healthier than what you'd buy at the grocery store or anywhere, because they're putting all these stabilizers or they're cutting corners to sell you
increase
something.
Profits. Yeah, it's a business. I think what's nice is we do live in Minnesota, which has an amazing food scene, and a lot of those businesses work with the local farmers, and they're very farm to table, pretty conscientious about good ingredients. So we're kind of spoiled in terms of we can eat out quite a bit, but we know that that's a luxury that most places don't have.
Yeah, true. It's crazy when you go travel. And
oh my gosh, when we were in Indiana, I was in tears.
My if you look on Google Maps, if there's a Chipotle or Whole Foods, the
it's
place is
a
worth
decent
living.
area. Yeah, agreed.
If they don't have a Chipotle, then it's
what am I gonna eat?
Then you have regular grocery stores, and then there's legit all you can buy is meat and eggs and butter.
But
That's like the real food, the only real food.
What I
in
love
real
about
grocery
Minnesota
stores.
is like even the small towns though have co-ops.
Yeah.
Like
It should be that way.
yeah, agriculture is just a very important part of our economics here. So that's been awesome for us.
All right, things
we do eat.
Yeah, let's talk about things we do eat.
Eggs.
Sausage, bacon, eggs, beef, lamb, seafood.
Salmon mostly.
And oysters, fish eggs.
Fish eggs.
Lamb is my favorite meat.
It's the most deuterium depleted of the red meat. And
I just think it tastes good. It's it's a little more pricey, but you can always find you should be able to find a good grass-fed
We really like
meat
lamb.
in your area.
I'm a little weird on lamb, you know. But when Phil makes lamb burgers, I like them more than beef burgers now. Mm-hmm. I'm like obsessed with lamb burgers.
Yeah.
They're so juicy.
Also, make sure the meat is local. I try and at least buy U.S. meat.
Yeah.
So, like Whole Foods meat's coming from New Zealand for the most part. Where I was there the other day, I just needed some taco meat for dinner. And it's like the best thing I could buy was buffalo from Texas.
Oh, God.
So I opted for that then.
That's terrible sourcing. That is terrible sourcing.
They're driving their Amazon, so they're going to find every way to make the cheapest, like,
I know, but
grass.
that's just terrible
So,
sourcing.
and they kind of rob you, too, because they charge a lot of prices. So if I go to the farmer's market, I can get cheaper meat.
And cheaper.
Yeah, better quality for cheaper. So really utilize people that are local. And sometimes they're not going to be at farmer's markets. You have to find them online or, like, some other way.
Yeah, if there's a CSA, you can do a CSA where you can, like, go in on a cow. At least in Minnesota, you can do that. You can, like, buy a full cow, you can buy a half cow, you can buy a quarter cow.
Yep.
And then you get a bunch of different variety of cuts, too. And bones to make your own bone broth. We do eat a lot of bone broth. We've made our own chicken bone broth before.
Mm-hmm. I opt for beef, though, for the most part. I try and stay away from chicken, but sometimes chicken just makes sense in the recipe, so I eat chicken.
Yeah. But I prefer the taste of the chicken bone broth, but...
For breakfast, we eat pretty much sausage, bacon,
and
a lot of sausage because it's actually kind of cheap and easy, and you could cook it a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Well, and you can make a lot at once, and you can either freeze it or put it in the fridge, and then it's easy for us to, like, reheat on the stove or in the oven. Oh, very important. Do not use a microwave. Ever.
Yeah. That
dehydrates all of your food. You're basically shaking all, and I'm going to say this wrong, so correct me, Phil. But doesn't it essentially, when you microwave it, it shakes all of the water particles until they start evaporating, and that's what's heating up the food. So essentially, you're not only, like, deuterating it, but you're also dehydrating.
You're not deuterating, but you're changing the information in the food.
Okay.
So, like, food has information in it, so there's ways to process food. Like, there's people who won't even use a blender because exposing it to that magnetic field and spinning it changes the spin of the electrons and protons where this light information is stored. The further your food travels, the less of this information there is in it.
Yeah, so
and it can be recorded. Like there was like that, I forget what it's called, but it's like a laser pretty much that Target was looking at using to source their food and like determine what it's worth. And you could like have it in the grocery store to see like pretty much the real quality of your produce, because not everything's equal on how long has it actually been there. And the more people it's touched, the further it's traveled, the longer it's been plucked, the less
benefit you're going to get from there. Yeah.
So that's where you're eating a lot of produce, but you paid a lot of money for this produce that's shipped halfway across the world that
it wasn't ripe when they picked it. It ripened on a truck across slow-mo going across the U.S.
Yeah.
So.
And how long did it sit in the grocery store?
Yeah. So sorry, that was my tangent on just don't use the microwave.
And then how are you processing your food? Like you're spending a lot of money on food. Do it well by cooking it on the stove slowly or however way.
Yeah, you want to do things at low heat. If you do things at high heat, you're damaging the fats. So you want to do things on low
depending
heat.
on the fats. Yeah. So like I don't cook with olive oil, I add it
at the end. Because each fat has a different burning point.
It's hard to damage butter and saturated fats. That's also why I like them.
What else do we eat?
So every morning.
Okay, so then we eat seasonally.
Yeah, we do eggs pretty much every morning.
Yeah, eggs every morning, sausage pretty much every morning.
And I'll add a video right now.
Yeah,
of the omelet I make, and it's kind of like I put mozzarella. Like the most of the cheese I eat is mozzarella and Parmesan. But I do mozzarella in the egg, scramble it, and then when it's almost cooked, I put a layer of Parmesan cheese and salt, and then flip it and sear that cheese, and then it becomes crispy, and then I fold it on itself. And then I eat it with like either sour cream or marinara sauce. I eat a lot of marinara sauce with things because I like sauces because I get bored, and you can change so many flavors in a spaghetti.
But you don't eat marinara sauce when tomatoes aren't being grown here.
I'm not as opposed to eating it. It's not like it's a little different. I do buy a pasta sauce that's from a local guy who makes it from organic tomatoes
that he grows.
And probably now that tomatoes are in season, I might buy a ton of tomatoes and
just stock up on it.
Freeze a bunch of sauce that I make. Just boil and condense and make some pasta sauces because I like sauces. Mm-hmm. Same. We do tacos, and typically what we do for tacos, there is like a cassava tortilla or an almond flour tortilla. It's a little better. Cassava. Which it's still a carb. But it's 10 carbs, yeah. 10 grams of carb. If I do tacos, I love tacos.
Yeah, we love tacos.
But a lot of taco meat. Even if I don't eat it with anything, I'll eat just plain taco meat.
Yeah.
A lot. Instead of like a steak, I like ground meat. I'll do ground lamb taco.
Well, I think what's hard about steak is I only really like one cut. I really only like a tenderloin or a fillet.
I eat onions year round for the most part, but those onions are actually coming local.
Yeah, true. Let's talk about our summer diet since it's summer.
It's late summer, so the summer solstice, is that what it's called?
Yep.
Was June 22nd. 21st. June 21st, and we're past a month, so we're starting to lose the UV.
Yeah.
Slowly. I don't know the last day we can make vitamin D, but it's coming up.
You said it was August 22nd.
Well, it's somewhere in August, early September where we can't make vitamin D anymore, and that's when you start to shift to
squash.
So I'm kind of on that last week. I'm kind of shifting to more of a ketotic diet right now. A lot more meats and fats.
Yeah, less.
Not the blueberries, potatoes. We were eating potatoes the last 2 weeks.
Because they're local.
Yeah, local potatoes.
Local blueberries.
I feel good eating potatoes. You know, some people don't. Yeah. I think we'll see sweet potatoes soon.
Yep, we'll see sweet potatoes and squash and.
But I'll eat a lot of squash. Yeah. Pumpkin. Love spaghetti squash.
Yeah.
And we have been eating that over the summer.
So for fall, you can eat, like for fall and winter, you can eat obviously what can be grown and what would have been able to be harvested.
And that's when I'm starting to shift to more keto.
I would say we're keto in the fall, and I would say that we're carnivore essentially in the winter.
Mm-hmm. With a lot more seafood.
A lot more seafood. Like we have salmon, just like a fillet of salmon almost every night for dinner.
And I post on my Instagram like the perfect breakfast or lunch for me. Or I'll even do it for breakfast is 2 oysters, 2 egg yolks, some fish eggs, and some seaweed. Just to iterate, the importance of DHA. And that's a good lunch to even take to the office if you work in an office. You're going to need more DHA. You have to cook your own oysters, but I don't think, once you get used to it, it's like no big deal. Yeah. Oysters last a long time. I heard you can have them like for a month. Wow. Before they go bad, maybe even longer. Wow. So they hold up well. Yes. But you have to get over the phobia of eating raw oysters,
Yeah.
which I hated seafood, and I never thought I'd be into cooking my own
I
oysters
know, we
and
like
eating them.
literally hated seafood our entire lives.
So that's crazy to me, but you got to do what you got to do to survive. And if you're vegetarian or vegan, this is something you could eat. I think it's really crucial to get DHA. And oysters are, I've heard arguments that they're less alive than even plants. The eggs, you're not hurting even fish. Some vegetarians don't have problems with eggs. So the raw egg yolks, you're at least getting some cholesterol and DHA and some other nutrients from the egg yolks. And then the fish eggs, the oysters have a lot of DHA, and it's really making up for what you're missing in your diet. That's extremely important. It's DHA in the SN2 position. Vegan and vegetarian sources of DHA come in the SN1 and SN3 position, and these forms of DHA won't cross the blood-brain barrier and do the same thing in your body. At a bare minimum, I would add these things to get DHA for your diet when you're eating a vegan vegetarian diet, avoiding red meats. And I'd recommend this for everyone, but especially the vegans and vegetarians, if you're not going to change anything else, to do this at a bare minimum. You might be able to get away with this modern environment if you really up the DHA and get more sunlight.
And then in Minnesota, we don't really get a spring, so our carnivore / keto kind of gets extended essentially till May.
Mm-hmm.
May is then when we start seeing like a little bit of blueberries maybe at the end of May, maybe strawberries.
Blueberries is July, strawberries is June.
Okay. So yeah, no fruit in May. Really no carbs in May. There's like a snowstorm typically.
Yeah, but you're getting the sun and stuff, so the more sun you get, the more lenient you can be. So
Yeah.
I'm eating, I'm not like too strict. I like to enjoy life.
Yeah, well, duh.
So it's like.
But if you're sick, like, we're just trying to explain to people what we would do.
Yeah, and if you're leptin resistant and you're overweight and you need to lose weight, then following stricter. And it can be hard to only eat 2 or 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
If you're leptin resistant, you might it might be harder for you to not snack after dinner. Some things that'll help reverse leptin resistance is getting more sun, really focusing on the circadian rhythm, protect your eyes, and watching TV at night or looking at screens will cause you to have more of these cravings, and eating it all compounds into the real focus should be on improving your sleep. And another way to reverse or to help overcome leptin resistance is cold tubbing. So I find if you do cold tubbing, you'll actually be less hungry and require less food. Kind of like sunlight. It kind of replaces sunlight in a weird way. But that's what I would try if I had a lot of cravings that you can't control. If you're having troubles, like you eat dinner at 5, but you're starving before bed and it keeps you up, that's a good sign you're leptin resistant. And you might be in a really bad environment, so you may have to move or do things to change your environment, turn off your phone, control the light in your environment. But cold tub, sunlight, watch the sunrise.
And one thing I would say is when we went from the bulletproof diet to actually when I just went on the bulletproof diet and cut gluten out, I did go through the Keto Flu. And so to avoid that, if you deuterium deplete before you start going into keto, you should avoid the Keto Flu if you're getting sunlight as well.
Well, it kind of compounds on each other. So get a lot of sunlight, and it makes it easier to
use fat as fuel,
to fast, and to start becoming keto adapted.
Right.
Because I could stop eating today and fast for 5 days and I'm not going to get sick.
Yeah, I'm fat
Where some
adapted now. I
people,
can jump in and
their
out.
body would break down, they'd tear their muscles apart, they'd lose a ton of weight, and they'd be really sick. Where, like, if I stopped eating today, I would have a ton of energy tomorrow. You almost get more energy, you're mentally clear.
Yeah.
So I guess that gets into, I am a fan of fasting, but I'm not by any means a professional on the subject.
No.
It's very complex
And
and
if
it's
you
hard to
actually,
recommend for people.
if you follow the circadian like timing of eating, you will actually be fasted, especially in the winter. If you stop eating at 4:30 or 5 and then you don't eat until the next morning at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., that's a very long fasted window.
Yeah.
So
that's where...
And it's fasted at the right time of day.
I love the idea of intermittent fasting, where I would do a fast from like dinner, and sometimes I would even eat like a little honey or collagen or like a little snack before bed at like 10 p.m. because I thought it helped with sleep. And then I'd wake up and do bulletproof coffee, or I wouldn't eat until noon or 1 or 2. So you have this window of 12 to 14 hours of no eating. But if you eat early from at 5, let's say 5 p.m. or when the sun sets, and then you wake up and the sun, let's say it rises now at 6, that's, a 12, 13-hour window. In the winter, you get more of a window, like 14, 16 hours.
I know.
Because the sun.
So you really don't have to put in a
8.
whole lot of effort in that fasting. You get to sleep most of the time.
Yeah, and I think that's where the real
Benefit
benefits
is.
you get from sleep. You have
You're
to be
rejuvenating, actually.
You have to be fasted. Where if you have raised insulin and glucose,
And you're
metabolizing, screwing up
yeah.
sleep and the release. Maybe I'll get into it in another podcast because I don't know the details. I just know that eating before bed, there's a lot of things that screws up. You should be sleeping and not digesting food.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult for people who are leptin resistant to not snack throughout the day. I recommend not snacking throughout the day, and ideally like 2 meals a day is what you should be able to do. Large breakfast and then a large dinner or medium dinner. I eat lunch for the most part, but it's pretty small.
Yeah. For lunch at work, I normally get a poke bowl, which is raw salmon, seaweed, ginger, and fish eggs. Or I get a grass-fed beef chili from like a local little store that's in the Skyway.
So you're eating a lot of, you're eating seafood because you get the fish eggs, you're getting the seaweed.
Seaweed and the salmon.
So again, and then I also want to iterate, get seaweed. I add a lot of seaweed to my diet because you get iodine, and that's one thing that is lacking, and I think in most people's diets. And there's a lot of interesting benefits to iodine. It's important for the thyroid. It protects PUFAs in the brain. PUFAs?
Ooh, that's a new one.
Which is
I don't know what that
DHA.
is. Oh, okay.
So,
Interesting.
it's important for brain health.
It would make
Iodine
sense
is.
that it like works with DHA because it's found in a lot of food that has DHA.
And maybe I'll get into this another time, but this is another one of those things
We have a
where
whole podcast that I think
I
we're
just
gonna
know
do
it's
on DHA.
important, so I eat seaweed instead of taking a supplement.
Yeah.
And if you don't eat seaweed, then I would be taking maybe some kelp pill, but
Fair.
seaweed's better. But if you...
But moral of the story, if it's not being grown in your local seasonal environment, try not to eat it. You can obviously treat yourself.
Or don't binge on it.
Yes.
And don't pretend to yourself that it's a health food.
Yes,
like
exactly.
eating a banana smoothie or going to...
Like, yeah, you can do that. Just know, like, okay, this is my food today.
Or let's say
my
you
splurge
do
food.
juicing, or you go to, what's that juice? Jamba
Juice.
juice?
Oh, Jamba juice is like just
Or,
sugar.
any of those. Like, go get ice cream or something that actually tastes good.
Right.
Or a cupcake and cake, because stop pretending it's anything different,
Right.
because it's not.
Yeah. If you're going to do a juice cleanse, like, literally just go to an ice cream shop.
Or remember when we thought Subway was good for our health? Like, that's how you lose weight, is you eat like Jared.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Then we find out it literally has, like, a chemical that's in yoga mats.
Where that's like acai boys.
Acai boys. Acai bowls.
Acai boys.
Yeah.
Bowls.
Acai bowls
It's
are
an
just...
acai bowls.
Yeah. It's a health food that's actually just a dessert.
Yeah.
It's not a health food.
Hopefully you really like it, because you could just be eating ice
Well,
cream.
after we finished it, I was like, I mean, that was good. That was refreshing, but I just want ice cream now.
Or juicing.
But let's finish with everyone's favorite topic of alcohol. We don't drink a whole lot of alcohol, but the ones that we do drink we'll drink Argentine Malbec. It's really high in resveratrol. It's the grapes are grown at high altitude, so you're getting huge UV benefits from those grapes.
The water's deuterium depleted in it because of the altitude.
Oh, so true. We'll also have red wine from Europe. We avoid all wine from California.
We avoid everything from California.
Yeah, poor California.
Like,
we
wine
shit
is
on
going to have a
them.
lot of chemicals and glyphosate and stuff in it.
Yeah.
So-
No, we used to want to move to California because, like, it has a really great culture. It has a good climate. But unfortunately...
Yeah, I'd say I get along with West Coast culture the most.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I get along with East Coast culture,
I
too.
love LA and...
Minnesota's like a hybrid of New York and LA, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we talk really fast, we get the cold winters, but we are, like, very nature-y. Like, we don't want to work too hard. We want to enjoy our summers. So, I'd say, yeah, we're a good blend of both coasts. But not to shit on LA and California too much, but yeah, we avoid their wine.
And their produce and
their produce and their
everything
food.
that comes from there.
And we try not to visit. But Europe, we'll drink red wine from Europe. We avoid white wine. It's me.
Yeah.
If we're gonna drink,
I drink a
hard
cider
alcohol,
here and there.
Yeah.
I opt for tequila. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I just will do.
I can't really give
tequila.
too much advice on alcohol.
'Cause I don't really
or
drink.
tell people not to drink. But, obviously
You
it's
have to
not
go with how you
good.
feel.
It's maybe good in moderation. Wines at high altitudes are probably better for you.
Yeah.
I'm on Jack Cruz's team on that side.
Yeah.
That resveratrol stores UV light, and you get some health benefits from wines at high altitude. When they're harvested, there's UV light present still in the environment. I think there's something to that.
Yeah. And then the one last thing I would say is coffee.
Oh yeah, coffee.
I do decaf coffee. I really actually hate caffeine. I hate the way it makes me feel. I hate the way that I get sweaty and jittery and things. And I still get sweaty and jittery when I have it with butter and when I have it with like a fat to help absorb it. So I just don't like the way it makes me feel. So I do decaf.
Yeah, and really I'm doing decaf to almost get off of like addiction to the caffeine of coffee.
Yeah, which I never really had. I'm just
Where-
addicted to like
I don't know
having
if
my
I'm-
warm beverage in the morning.
I don't even know if I feel caffeine, but having a caffeine in something can cause you to develop an acquired taste for it, I think. So drinking
it is addictive.
decaf, and I think it dehydrates you in ways. It also it affects your sleep. Even several, like drinking in the morning can affect
12 hours.
a lot of
later.
we might get into it more of why I'd be concerned about drinking caffeinated coffee as the environment's changing.
Yeah.
But
It's also high in deuterium because it is the flower or the bean of the plant.
so I would just say stop tricking yourself and telling yourself that it's a health food.
Yeah. Like if you're struggling with something, maybe just cut the coffee out for a few weeks and see how it goes.
Yeah, or switch to decaf. I think it's huge. It's
Yeah.
not easy at first, but once you get through the first like 2-3 weeks, then it's like, oh, I don't even miss
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's more of like, ooh, my warm beverage as I'm sitting at my desk and like checking email. I don't even necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was our diet podcast. Subscribe on Apple, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, Castbox. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at WAKN Podcast, WAKN Podcast. And let us know what you think. Let us know what's working for you. Let us know
It gives me ideas.
what you're hearing. Yeah,
hearing
it
anything
really,
or questions gives me ideas of
it
what
helps
I should
steer
talk
our
about.
Conversation. Yeah,
Because I
answer
really don't know
questions.
what people don't know. Like
We all.
it's strange that, I know all these things and then I forget. Like people are still stuck on
Or just starting to discover.
what a calorie is.
Yeah. But that's fine. I mean, that's what we're here for, and we're happy to share what we have researched and found. But again, we know that we don't know everything. We know that we all know nothing. So, thanks for listening, And tune in next time.
Peace. See ya. Bonjour.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Bonjour is hello.
What's bye?
Au revoir.
In
Arrivederci.
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 Adios.
Ciao.
Adios, amigos.
Bye, Pepper.
Wave, Pepper.
She wants dinner. That's why
Where's
she's
Pepper?
lick attacking me. She's on my lap.
Put her on the table.
Bye.
Pepper, come here. Come here.
She's like, no, I want dinner. Go to dad.
Come here.
Go to dad. Oh.
Our cat dog.
Bye.